managing a $60 million venture fund with Sony Pictures Entertainment that we were investing in media companies around the world, and then running an incubator for KPMG, which is completely different, trying to find angel funding and raise the first series of venture funding. I've always been putting together entrepreneurs with funding. And then one time I even tried to raise my own venture fund after I left KPMG, and was just shocked to find out that most of the funding for venture funds comes from our pension money. And endowments and foundations that we as public are funding. And I always thought, wow, isn't it amazing that only a small group of people controls this large pool of money that we are all contributing to? So with crowdfunding, for the first time, you can actually decide how your money is being spent, which is, I think, more than any of us ever hoped for within our lifetime. And we have a set of panelists here that are working mostly on the platforms to provide that sort of access to funding to you as an investor, and to you as a company founder, and to you as a creative project developer on all. And why is that kind of relevant for us as a society today? So I'm going to stop my perspective on this and let the panelists start with their perspective. So we're going to start with Candace Klein, who is the founder and CEO of SoMoLend, which is a funding platform for debt funding. So tell us a little bit about how did you come up with this and why?
Thank you, Mariana. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for holding off on lunch. I appreciate it. I just got here from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I'm glad to be with you. My name is Candace Klein, and I actually come to this path of crowdfunding from a unique perspective. I actually am a securities attorney, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Prosper.com, but they've been allowing individuals to invest in individual loans for quite some time now. And I was their defense counsel when they were shut down by the SEC a few years ago, and spent a lot of time on that case. As a result, I started my first business, which is called Bad Girl Ventures. This is a microfinance company that invests in female founders. And we had thousands of women apply to come through our program in our first year of operation, but I could only fund 39 of them. So I thought, well, what can I do for the other thousands who came through that I can't provide direct funding for? And the answer was, I'll create a platform that can allow them to raise money from their friends, family, social networks, even if they can't get money from banks or venture capitalists. And my lawyers, when I launched my second business, SoMoLend, said, we won't represent you because what you're doing is illegal. And it was. And so I said, you're fired. That's the wrong answer. That's the C answer. That's the lazy lawyer answer. The B answer is there are loopholes, and we'll work our way through them, and we have been. And the A answer is, let's change the law. And he laughed at me. And then I went to Washington, D.C. and helped to author a portion of the Jobs Act. And I now chair... Thank you. And I'm now chairing the industry task force that's meeting every week with the SEC to create this new crowdfunding industry. And I won't go into detail right now because I know that we have other panelists, but I will just say the types of crowdfunding that you might already be familiar with, Kickstarter, which I know we'll talk about, Indiegogo, Rocket Hub, these are reward and debt-based platforms. These are reward and donation-based platforms, and these are permitted today. These are legal. What isn't legal yet is equity and debt. These are securities. And a security is defined as when a person makes an investment and gets a return on their investment. That is a security, and that's not yet legal. That's what the Jobs Act is allowing. So if you're a creative in the room and you want to raise money and you couldn't do it through donations, but you still have a very compelling concept, you could potentially raise equity or debt for your concept. And if you're a person in the room who, you're sick of the stock market, quite honestly, and you're not happy with your savings, you now have a new opportunity to invest in the projects and people that you know and love and get a return on that investment. Now, that won't happen until sometime next year, and I'm happy to answer questions about that today.
So, Candace, thank you so much for getting on the plane to meet with us here in your very short time schedule today, and thank you for fighting for us in Washington. So next to Candace is Wil Schroter, who's the CEO of Fundable, and you'll tell us a little bit more about
Sure.
your
So
point of view?
there are actually two people that just came from Ohio. I'm from Columbus, Ohio.
He's my neighbor.
Yeah.
I went to Worthington High School, so I'm with
Did
you guys.
Really?
We're side by side.
Wow,
Everywhere
this
we go.
room's getting small.
Small world. That's how they picked the
Ohio
panel.
University. Oh my God, look at this. We didn't have to go anywhere. We traveled. You guys should have come to us. Wil Schroter. My background, I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years. In 94, I started one of the first web design companies called Blue Diesel. Who knew? When I told people I was starting an internet company, the question was, what's the internet? We've come a long way since then. That company merged into what was then a small ad agency, and we've grown that to, it says about $2 billion a year right now with about 13,000 employees, most of which has nothing to do with my efforts. The company's long since sold, so I can't take credit for that. After that, I ended up starting more internet companies. So I started swaplease.com, some companies locally here, unsubscribe.com, affordit.com, gotcast.com in a television casting space. All those companies were venture funded. I've been through the startup phase, the fundraising phase, the early frustrating phases, and I understand the fundraising process extraordinarily well. We started one of the first fundraising platforms back in 2004 called the Go Big Network, and over 400,000 companies have come to us looking for funding in every walk of life you could possibly imagine. We see about 10,000 new companies per month looking for funding. And so what we started to put together was Fundable, which is a platform to allow people to raise relatively small sums of money, typically between $10,000 and $250,000, in a simple, cost-effective way. We support both rewards raises as well as equity raises to accredited investors. We launched a few months ago, and the platform's been really successful, and I'd love to talk to you about how companies probably like yours are actually raising money in both forms.
Will, how is an accredited investor defined? Because we're going to have to go through that just quickly.
You got an attorney here. She can tell you.
Okay, Candace, how is it defined?
And please jump in, because I am not an accredited investor yet. I'm not making enough money to do that. But an accredited investor is defined as an individual who has made $250,000 per year in net income for the past 2 years, or there are a certain amount of net worth, $1 million in net worth.
Yeah, excluding your home.
Excluding your home. And so if you fit that bill, you can be making investments right now. If you don't, which I don't, you're going to have to wait for this legislation.
For like a quarter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Dana, right? No. Liz, I'm sorry. Liz Singh, who's with the Rachel Corrie Syndrome, which is a production company.
The Rachel Corrie Syndrome is actually a short film that I produced, and Farrah Goes Bang is a feature. So I'm kind of coming from a user point of view, that the reason that I'm here is Farrah Goes Bang is my first feature. We raised over $82,000 on Kickstarter to make it, and now I'm planning the campaign for a second film, so that's sort of my point of view on this stuff.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Give her a round of applause.
Yay, money.
Dana? Dana? No, we don't have Dana.
Tyler.
Tyler, wait,
No, I
they
was like, where's
switched. I'm
Dana?
sorry. They switched Dana out for Tyler. Tyler, you look very nice today.
Thank you.
Tyler's actually a WePay company, which is the payment platform that actually is funding several of these new crowdfunding platforms.
Yeah, so my name is Tyler Gaffney. I run sales and business development for WePay. WePay is a very easy way to get to accept payments online. So we allow people to get set up very quickly and accept payments. So mostly businesses on our core platform. But what's probably most relevant here is that we actually power the payments for several crowdfunding sites. So there's a lot of complexities when it comes to payments. I think for people that were here this last session, there was a lot of questions around tax and how that whole thing works. So we've kind of built a platform where it allows platforms like Fundable to very easily provision accounts for the projects, and so that they have the ability to accept these payments very easily.
So Tyler's going to be sort of that layer of payment mechanism for all the new crowdsourcing platforms. That's what we're hoping to
That's
achieve.
the goal, yes.
The operating system of the whole system.
And you're looking forward to working with SoMoLend as well, right,
Yeah,
Tyler?
so right now we don't do equity crowdfunding.
Thank you, Candace.
But
I always put pressure on
that's
them.
the plan. That's the plan. So we actually we work with Fundable, and obviously
We're literally your biggest fan. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to hug you right now, but you guys are awesome.
Well, we appreciate it. Okay,
But that's going to be an issue in terms of collecting the funds that you've raised, which is going to be a big issue for all entrepreneurs. So we're going to discuss. And Joyce Schwartz, last but not the least.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to join the panel. And I've been very excited about crowdfunding. If you don't realize, this is your big chance in the next 3 to 5 years before there is many more layers of legal addition to it, to fund that project that is your project of your dreams and is the project that will change the world. And my background includes working at major ad agencies like Foot Cone and Belding, and working with major clients ranging from Kraft to AT&T. And for the last, I've been in the internet since 1990. I wrote some of the earliest books on it. I've actually put up a blog today, Hollywood 2020, 2020.net, Hollywood 2020.net, and I put just some of the latest stats on there and some links to some of the articles that are online today. And then I also put a link to, shameless self-promotion, to a crowdfunding VIP home study kit that I created earlier this year, because a lot of my clients, I have a high-tech aspect to my work and then a high-touch, more spiritual, inspirational kind of work. I believe that this is, a great opportunity, whether you want to save the world or you want to create a project or a tool that will change the way that we work or play or educate people. I wanted to say that this is really, the complexity of this seems to get more and more, and then this whole thing about the equity and SEC, and it kind of is scary, and you will read a lot of articles that say don't touch crowdfunding. But let's think of it in one very simple way. This is PBS television meets Broadway funding, or the way that we have funded independent film for the last 20 years. And that is groups of people, either in a limited partnership or in terms of getting their name on a movie, have given money to you, and then depends on what financial instrument there is to organize that. Obviously, you're going to have a lawyer from the beginning, no matter what you do. I would strongly recommend that, even if you're going to raise $5,000, because the whole thing is, I hope that's not the end of where you're going.
I also strongly recommend that.
Yes. And if you want one great resource to get you motivated, go see or rent or download, legally, the last Muppet film. What they do is put on a show. And, it's the great Judy Garland, Andy Rooney, was it Andy? No, Andy, whatever his name was back in the day. Thank you. I always love the audience who knows more than I do. It's great. And put on a show. And that's really what you must do. This is not something that you just put up this pretty video and you put up, look, we will give you some free downloads. We will give you a free PowerPoint. We will give you a free cap. This is much more than that. This is romancing your audience, getting them involved. They must need you more than you need them. And that is my whole wisdom, how to raise funds. I have raised a National Endowment for the Arts grant for $100,000 for the California Legion of Honor, if anybody in San Francisco knows that. I've raised a California Arts grant to change museums across the country. I've raised a California Jobs grant to start multimedia programs, and for the Orange Coast Community Colleges, when there was absolutely no laboratories, we got an RV to go around. So I do think that crowdfunding is a matter of using a number of sources. Do not depend just on this crowdfunding platform, CFP or Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever. You must really look at all ways of raising funds. That means, one, you must have a business model. You must have proof of concept. If you do not have proof of concept, I strongly recommend you not go up on, you raise some friends and family money.
Okay, so Joyce, let's address with all the. Joyce can probably just do the whole panel herself.
Okay,
because
sorry about that.
She's been through it many times.
You get the idea.
She's funded. She's done book projects for years. I don't know how many books now. She's done internet sites. She's done companies. She's working with a platform right now in this space. But let's ask some of these people focusing a little bit more in today. What do you think is going to work, debt or equity funding, and why are you doing debt funding, Candace?
Well,
to put you on the spot.
Sure. So I think all of it will work, and I think that there is so much demand, pent-up demand in the United States for portal-based funding that there will be plenty of success stories. I think Fundable and SoMoLend can walk hand in hand down the street together, singing "Kumbaya," because there is enough deals for both of us to be wildly successful. The reason debt works is very different than the reason that equity works. We are working with very different kinds of companies, to be quite honest. You know, when people hear about crowdfunding right now, if you read the Wall Street Journal or any articles that have been coming out, everybody keeps talking about startups. I'm sorry, but that's not necessarily where the great demand is going to come from for crowdfunding. And what we're finding, at least in the debt space, are those companies who have maybe been around for a couple of years and have some projects under their belt, maybe beyond project 2 or 3, and can prove that they've actually done something in the past, but still can't get a bank loan because of the type of industry they're in, whether it be a creative industry, restaurants, retailers. Those are the businesses that we're working with. They're typically looking for, $150,000 on average on our platform, and we've seen about 1,300 borrowers so far. We launched our platform in December of last year. We launched a beta in May of this year, and just since May 7th, we've had 1,300 borrowers sign up, and they're typically the bricks and mortar types of industries, or the industries who have already done a project or two in the past and are looking for their next funding cycle.
So they don't have the same risk profile as equity.
Right, and the one thing I'll say about debt, for those of you who are investors in the room, it's definitely worth paying attention to because it's liquid. The beautiful thing about the debt portfolio is that you actually get repaid with interest, and there will be a faster secondary market for it. And so as you're considering which crowdfunding platforms you want to get engaged in, I'd strongly encourage you to look at crowdfunding platforms, of which there aren't very many. So I'm happy to have that conversation.
So, Will, what's being funded with equity funding?
Well, from an equity funding standpoint, something we've been doing for almost 10 years now, helping people through that process in every way possible. I think a lot of when people talk about crowdfunding as a whole, they keep thinking like a Kickstarter project where it's like a one-off gadget, et cetera. Most businesses just aren't that. Most people aren't raising money to build one prototype that they're going to pre-sell. Most people need operating capital. Most people need money to pay themselves as part of that operating capital. Money you typically don't raise in a rewards-based or a pre-order type model. And that's where equity tends to come. Equity tends to be, I need money for something that won't happen for years to come, or is incredibly capital intensive, and only a return on the investment is going to be worthwhile. We allow folks that come onto our platform to choose either equity or rewards. And frankly, most people end up choosing equity because the average person starting a business doesn't have a compelling reward. It's actually very unusual that you would. It's awesome if you do. We've had companies come on that say, I need, just like a Kickstarter, I need $10,000 in order to get my minimum product out there to get the first order. And I think our first customer raised $20,000 in 30 days, on a rewards basis. Our average fundraise has been around $20,000. I think Kickstarter is around 6 or 7, but it's different target demo.
How are you accrediting the investors?
Well, the investors that we accredit through the site, no one can look at equity-based deals unless they go through an accreditation process, which more or less, I'm going to absolutely simplify here, is the equivalent of clicking on a terms of service. Like you do when you buy something on the iTunes or the Apple Store.
So they don't have to go through a brokerage.
Representations and warrants.
Yeah, correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's relatively simple. That's going to change dramatically per the
With
Jobs
the Jobs Act.
Yeah,
how's that going to change, Candace?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know yet. I just met with the SEC.
I was just hoping to get the inside scoop.
No, I just met with the SEC and FINRA last Friday, so I do have the most up-to-date information. But what I can say is that representations and warranties aren't going to work anymore. That the SEC and FINRA are very concerned about people losing their life savings on these deals, and so they're going to ask the investors to complete surveys, questionnaires, potentially quizzes about the deals to know that they've actually looked at the types of information that they need to know that they're making a risky investment. And there will likely be a database requirement where portals like ours will actually have to submit both the issuers, the people who are raising the money, and the investors, so that we know, because right now, an investor, if you're making less, let me just tell you the rules real quick. If you're making less than $40,000 a year with the Jobs Act, you can only make equity or debt investments up to $2,000. If you're making between $40,000 and $100,000, you can invest up to 5% of your income or net worth, I believe. Yeah. And if you're investing, or if you make more than $100,000, you can invest up to 10% of your income. or $100,000, whichever is less. Now, we're fighting, by the way, for the accredited investors. They shouldn't have caps. So we're making sure that the SEC knows about that. But you're only allowed to do that per year. So that means that if you're on Kickstarter, or if you're on Fundable and you invest $2,000, you can't then come to SoMoLend and also invest $2,000. And that's why we're looking at a database. So we're actually going to have to ask a lot more questions of the investor and of the issuer.
And who's going to police the fact that you invested on Fundable and on Soma? And I mean, is that going to be you, Tyler?
That's a tough question.
It's likely going to be FINRA.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. Like we want to talk a lot about the equity stuff because I think that's probably the most exciting. But every day you have these scenarios. Every day on Fundable, right? I mean, it's the pre-orders, right? It's reward-based fundraising, and that then morphs into what the equity stuff will become. The simple answer to that is like we don't know, right? I mean, I'm providing payments for this, and like I want to make sure that I mitigate risk as much as possible. But when it comes to regulations, we really have to look to Washington, D.C. and see what they say.
So it could be similar to donations, political donations with $2,500 cap for the individual.
Joyce, come up with a NUCA that's in the internet space, and let's see how these guys would fund it.
Let me go back to couple more ways of funding that haven't been discussed. Okay. One, I personally think sponsorship. It is an amazing way of funding, where you actually have a corporation that funds, or a brand that funds your product or service, or forms an alliance with a number of different brands. And whether, say, a good example of this is a film festival or Digital Hollywood, where you see all those logos, those are sponsorship funds.
So do you think that's going to go onto the platform?
Excuse me?
Would that go onto one of these platforms? Why not?
Of course it can, of course, and you can raise money. One of the tricks, if you're doing professional fundraising, I am a professional fundraiser, but don't come up to me about raising money, because what I want to do is show you and empower you to how to do it.
All right, but wait a minute. You are now steering us in the direction of how we raised funds for years. Is that going to go away?
No, it's not. And
why not?
Because this has been a traditional, just like radio and television.
I think it will. Tell me why not.
I do not feel it's going to go away, because sponsorship is a tried and true model. It has worked for films. Its promotion is insurance. It's guaranteed that you will get that visibility for that product, service, or company once you have raised the money. You still have to go to market with this.
So, guys, did you see any brands investing on projects on your sites yet, or is it just all individuals?
I don't think it's either or. I don't think it's sponsorship will go away and crowdfunding will take over. Really, what we're seeing right now in the behaviors is crowdfunding is mimicking what people have been doing for generations.
Exactly.
It's just making it a lot easier.
As you mentioned, Joyce, you said friends and family financing, getting to your minimally viable product. You still have to do that on crowdfunding. And for instance, on SoMoLend, it usually is, SoMoLend is the friends and family financing. It's your first circle of friends who are investing in our borrowers on SoMoLend.
And then what happens in 2013?
Then strangers can start investing as well.
Everyone becomes an angel investor.
Your friends and family list grows much larger.
But you have to.
You can be related to me. I don't mind.
You have to back up a little bit. Has anybody here raised money? It's hard, like crazy, stupid hard. Like
How many of you have raised money in the audience? Okay, we've got war stories, I'm sure.
I'm literally sorry for all of you. And the reason I say that is because just because you can now go out to a larger audience and raise money doesn't make it any less hard. In fact, it makes it geometrically harder. Because the hardest people to raise from, just to begin with, have always been friends, family, early stage customers, etc. Now you're saying you have to market your deal in a much more impactful way across lots and lots of channels. It's incredibly hard. Even though this is going to open up Equity and Jobs Act to lots of other investors, it doesn't make them necessarily easy to attract as investors. And I think that the level of sophistication for fundraisers is going to have to go up orders of magnitude.
So, Singh, you have to raise funding. You are the only person here today raising funding for your production company and then for projects. Where would you go after you heard all of this?
Wait, we're going to start laughing.
Can you give us a one-liner about your project?
Now they're becoming your friends and family here on the panel.
The project was, it's a road movie.
Yeah, we do. Singh, you want to show your clip to see what's being funded?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, let's see it.
And we know what it is.
Well, you can talk and they'll show the clip in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, this is...
So here's a great project you can fund.
It's now funded, but yeah, but there'll be more projects like it. It's an independent feature film about 3 girls who go on the road in 2004 to campaign for John Kerry, and one of them is trying to lose her virginity along the way. The title character, Farah.
This is something that has nothing to do with John Kerry.
If if I'm being totally honest, like for me, the reason that Kickstarter was appealing was because we're such beginners, and this is going to sound so dumb, but most of what you just said I didn't really understand, and I aspire to understand.
That's a point in itself,
I think
right?
that's true with most of us. Is that unless you study this is a whole new realm of opportunity, and it's a whole new realm of continuing education.
I think it's important to note just the different types, and going back to that again, I mean, we want to talk about equity because it's probably in the news the most, but this is very much a donation-based or maybe even perks-based crowdfunding.
What do people get for giving you money on Kickstarter?
Oh, we did all kinds of crazy stuff, and I've got to say that's one of the reasons that we were successful is that we offered really sort of personalized gifts and rewards. Like you see a lot of these campaigns where the first like several prizes, which are the ones that most people are going to donate, most people are going to throw you like $25 basically, and if all you're giving them for that is like a still from your project or like a thank you on the internet, like that shows your audience what you think of them. So it was really important to us to show our audience that we cared. So there was everything in there from like different themed care packages depending on the level of donation to individual MMA lessons to, and then we did like special giveaways throughout, like if you donate on a Tuesday or if you meet this or if you bid on this. So we kept it really active. So yeah, literally everything from our director's DVD collection to a bottle of nail polish that happened to be called Farrah. Yeah.
How often did you communicate with people that had donated? And
we didn't communicate that frequently through Kickstarter, but we were tweeting and Facebooking probably every 3 hours.
Did you have a blog?
We didn't have a blog.
Okay,
no.
I strongly recommend that you have a blog and that you use blogs as one of the ways to promote your project.
So in terms of, Joyce, how would you fund her next
Okay,
project?
well, hold on. Okay, yeah, exactly.
Give us a pitch.
What kind of car did you go cross country in?
It was Volvo, I think.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to Volvo, and I'm going to say these gals are going cross country with an award-winning, hopefully, award-winning film?
Hopefully.
No. Has it not been in
No,
festivals?
submitted to Sundance now.
Okay, what about Without a Box? Have you submitted through there?
No.
Without a Box will submit you to 50 film festivals immediately, okay? But it has been screened at Digital Hollywood as of now, if we see the clip. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to Volvo and say, okay, how would Jeep has done this? Go on the internet and you will see that Jeep has done this. And I'm going to say we've got, and they want that younger demographic. They want the women. I'm going to get the stats from them. And your gals are which age?
In their mid-20s.
Well, this would be a great audience for them. It's a very safe car to give to your daughter if you were going to college, okay? So I'm going to start with Volvo, okay? And then I'm going to start with, where did you go cross-country?
We didn't actually. We shot mostly in LA.
Okay, but where do you want to go?
New Mexico, we went to Ohio, we went to Wisconsin.
Okay, I'm going to go to the tourism divisions, and if you saw the CNBC this morning, and you saw, I'm also going to go to Mr. Tisch, who was on CNBC talking about tourism being the #1 opportunity for growth in this country, and with whatever the stats were, you can go to CNBC and come up with it. And I'm going to ask the tourism division of New Mexico to sponsor part of this film.
So how long will this take?
Will not take more than 6 weeks.
Okay, my point. How long would it take on Fundable, and what would you do with this kind of a project?
We tell her to go to Kickstarter. We don't do arts projects. If you're doing it, it really matters where you're trying to go and who your audience is. Kickstarter's got an amazing creative audience and folks that want to support the arts. We're almost like the evil stepchild where all we want to focus on is business, right? And so from our standpoint, if you're looking for investors, if you're looking for professional grade kind of investment capital, that's where we come. If you want to start a production company,
there's a resource out there, should you guys be interested, called crowdsourcing.org. I don't know if you heard about this in other panels, but they just issued a report in July that listed out every single crowdfunding platform around the globe.
How many?
There are 530 as of July. There's probably more than that now. And what their focus is on. So if there are arts projects, if it's business, consumer products, they'll be able. That report is extremely helpful for helping you target which platforms you might want to look at. So
let's just look for one moment, step back one more time, just to think about this whole funding universe. If you're in 2012, in October of 2012, your options are you can go to friends and family. You can go to angel investors. I've raised angel money for my last company. It was the most painful money I've ever
I
raised.
gave 220 presentations to 112 different investors to raise just under $2 million.
And we raised just under $500,000, and it was from friends that we knew, and it was the most expensive, emotionally charged money. I mean, I raised from all the top VCs, and angels were by the hardest. So if you can skip that step somehow, you may want to really look at these resources, right?
And friends and family, too. I raised friends and family capital for my first business. I raised angel and VC money for my second business. And I raised money for my mom and my Uncle Steve for my first company. And at first, they seemed really cool until I borrowed their money. But then I realized after I borrowed their money that Steve's a jerk, and then my mom cries. And so it made for two very uncomfortable Thanksgivings. And, you know, Steve's saying, I read about you in the paper, Candace, when do I get my money back? And my mom's saying, I gave birth to you, and you're paying Steve back first? It was horrible. If you had a crowdfunding platform, you'd be able to raise money from your mom and Uncle Steve and 100 other people and actually be able to put a layer of separation between you and those people.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that we exist.
When the market crashed in 2008, I was on the board of directors of several startups from Silicon Valley, and we were all unable to raise money from venture capital. And all of the CEOs got on the phone and said, Mariana, who do you know that's an accredited investor that we can raise angel funding? And I was like, really? Is that what we have to do now? Because the whole pitch about VCs was that they are professional money managers. They're not that passionate about their own money, but they have to show return, and they realize one out of 10 is going to succeed, and it's easier to really get that money and then do something with it. But in this case, do you think we're going to have some passionate crowdfunders that will pull their money just like the VCs and angels did in the last few years?
Absolutely. I'll just say of the 1,300 borrowers that have signed up on our platform, we've had 1,500 lenders since May. Now, we're very new as a company, but we've had more people sign up wanting to put their money in than wanting to take the money out. And usually it's 1 to 2 degrees of separation from one of the entrepreneurs. And so these entrepreneurs, family members, and friends are already signing up saying, I want in. I want to put my money into these companies. And they're just not allowed to quite yet.
I think what we're finding, too, is like by making the platform more accessible, all of a sudden a lot of people who wouldn't have, this is any kind of crowdfunding, a lot of people who wouldn't have invested in you for the full amount, like if your minimum buy-in was $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, that's just a lot of money. But if my minimum buy-in could be $1,000, you know, even at an equity level, I'd be willing to participate. So I think by lowering the thresholds, you open up a lot of other people who wouldn't traditionally even call themselves investors, but really do want to support the entrepreneur.
And to what Joyce was saying, and I interrupted her rudely, was the sponsorship raises and the raises of non-equity bearing money, which are not donations,
right,
which she's done forever, partnerships.
We've had 37 films that I've worked with. Almost all of them have at least gone to DVD, okay, or to home video. And many have been shown theatrically, too. But one of the other things, of course, is the idea of the web series. Okay, and I would also get a marketing sponsor. I would have AOL Lemon Drop that comes to mind.
So then I'm thinking, how do you think the market will get more automated in adding that sort of funding, the non-equity bearing,
there
the
is
not
something
debt?
called sponsorship.com. There have been some people that have tried to do it. There's a colleague of mine in New York that is working on this. And the other end of this is possibly product placement, obviously, right? And we'll take you the largest product placement firm. But we need to know where you're going with this film. Who's going to see it? What's the audience going to be?
So, Candace, are these platforms out there?
Well, yes, they are, and they're covered in crowdsourcing.org. One of the other things that I think when somebody asked, are brands signing up on the platforms?
Yeah.
Actually, yes. It's interesting who signed up to lend on SoMoLend. Toyota has signed up and they're making investments. We have several banks, big banks, Bank of America, KeyBank, Fifth Third. So if your products are, I think it's worth having a conversation with a few of the platforms, but we do have brands that have signed up to start investing.
You're going to do the same thing you would do if you had a theatrical film. You're going to hire somebody on some sort of a retainer basis to do this for you. And
just because it's so complicated. I think
that's
what you're
because
trying
you don't
to
have time. You are the creative. This is not your core competency. Okay, your core competency is not out there.
The good news is you're going to have access to money. The the bad news, it is complicated, and we're not all securities attorneys, although we wish we were.
It's really not. It's not that complicated. we put a lot of words into documents to make them seem more complicated.
So it's going to be easier to use the platforms, is what you're saying, if you can just check that you agree with the terms?
So the way that these platforms work is you fill out an application, just like you would be applying for a loan or filling out your business plan. You'll still have to have a business plan. You'll still have to have a price for what you're going to raise your money for, what you're going to give, whether it's rewards or whether it's a stake in your company. You're going to have to know what $10,000 buys a person, and you have to be able to communicate that to them. You're going to have to put your financials out there for the world to see how much you're planning on spending, what you're planning on spending it on, and you're going to have to report back afterwards to show that you actually spent it on what you said you would. So this is a forced accountability on these platforms. I think it'll be much easier for you to try it yourselves. I think you'll still need help, particularly in creating that video and the pitch and all of that. But I think you can, in many instances, do it yourself, but you're going to have to be prepared to be accountable for that money. And that's one of the things right now that we're seeing with Kickstarter and others, is that a lot of people have raised money and aren't delivering right now on the product. And, one of the title of this panel is Mo Money, More Problems. And I think one of the things we have to be very careful about is the accountability. The reason that the regulation is in place, the reason that the SEC is doing what they're doing, is to make sure that you actually deliver on your promises. And that's not something that you necessarily have to do in reward and donation based.
Well, I think that there is risk and accountability, though, on the reward stuff as well. Like we're seeing it, I think, has anybody heard of a company called Lockatron? Has anybody heard of that?
You'll look it up now.
So, yeah, we can it's actually interesting if we went to their website. It's a group of guys out in Silicon Valley, have a really cool idea. They said, you want to open up your door with your iPhone. They go to try to get funding. They can't really get any funding. They say, okay, what are we going to do? We'll put it on Kickstarter. So they put it on Kickstarter. Kickstarter rejects it and says, you don't have a prototype that is in our hands and working. There's too much risk. We can't determine that you're a good business. So what they did was they actually made their own Kickstarter on their site and went to Lockatron.com and said, hey, we'll just run it ourselves. They raised $2 million in 15 days. So everybody's like, wow, this is so great. All I have to do is put something on a website and it's there. The issue, this story is not over yet because, one is they've just pre-authed all these cards, meaning they have not captured the funds. They will actually charge your card when they ship that out. So we've got to have them develop the product. They've got to actually then ship it out, and then we've got to make sure it works, and then they'll charge the card. So they may not get all those funds. But if they don't deliver, what happens then? Where does the risk fall? And that's why I think the importance of the platform is there, not just regulation, but the platform's really important because they're ultimately the ones that are vetting these projects and saying, hey, this is something that we believe in. So it's interesting, $2 million, and everybody says it was really easy. Well, what were the three things that they really did? One, they spent 2 months on their video. The second thing is they had a product. And if you have an actual, creative project or something, that would be the same thing. But they also got a lot of PR, too. They spent a lot of time going out to reporters and saying, I got this great product. So it's not one of those things where you can just plop it on Kickstarter and expect to raise millions of dollars. In fact, if you look at the successful campaigns like Pebble, if anybody's heard of Pebble, watch. I mean, those guys, it's a legitimate company. I mean, and there's a group of guys in Silicon Valley that are there, and they said this is a better opportunity, and instead of going down the typical equity funding in Silicon Valley with angel investors and VCs, and because
they were turned down too. They went to VCs and got turned down, and it's kind of they're geeks. The guy, I've been on panels with them. They're total geeks. And the reason that I think their Kickstarter campaign worked was because they were able to actually kind of remove the geekiness that was them and put forward the product that was so sexy.
But that shouldn't really matter, though, right?
But geeks are cool, Candace. Especially digital
Hollywood. I'll end up marrying a geek someday, I'm sure.
But it's a good point. I don't know
we
if
can introduce you to a few.
I live in the land of the geeks, out in Palo Alto, so it's that's every day.
Tyler? We can find a few.
Yeah. But that's interesting though, because people are buying this. They said, hey, people want this product, right? They don't necessarily believe in our company. They want to pre-sale this product, and they were able to raise $6 million. I think it would be very different if they said, hey, it's 10 up to now.
Yeah.
I think it would be very different if they said, hey, we want to build this business.
That's
and
very
different. That's the difference
Yeah.
between pre-sales and building.
So let's address that. That's a really good segue. So there are many different segments of the business that we kind of brushed upon in these discussions. So let's kind of understand what's fundable in which way. I'm trying to create some order out of chaos. You want to try to answer that, Mr. Fundable?
You want to know which types of businesses are most fundable?
Yeah, so like a venture-backed type business has a hockey stick growth,
Yeah.
perfect for fundable.
Yeah, and the way we look at it is the story is absolutely the most compelling part. A lot of what people are raising right now, and I think will continue to raise, is what we call support capital. It's that first $10,000 to $250,000 that's literally going to come from friends, family, early customers, and maybe investors that are more interested in what you're doing than what the return will be. The reality is that at that low of a raise amount, you're not going to be set for life on capital. You're not going to take a business and make it Facebook on $200,000 of a raise. You're going to have to raise lots more money. You're also probably at a point in your business where you're still just figuring everything out, and the only people that are going to bet on you are people that genuinely believe in your story. And so even as you go into equity raises, et cetera, I do strongly believe, based on a lot of what we're seeing, that most of the support is going to come from people that just genuinely like you, like the product, and want to see you succeed. And then secondarily, would also like to get their money back at some point, kind of like your family.
Well, and on the debt side of things, what we're finding is the most fundable project is one that actually has gotten some traction. So, that you've actually done something before, or that you've proven yourself in some way. Those are the ones that are getting funded the most quickly, and we're funding deals in as little as 5 days right now. And we funded a $550,000 grocery store in 5 days, and so those things are happening.
How many people were
it was 13. So it's still a small group. We're working with an existing exemptions of securities laws. So we have banks and corporations like Toyota lending on our platform. Individuals are not yet lending. But the reason why is because this owner had owned 2 grocery stores before, and so they were able to prove that out and show it in their business plan that they had some experience.
And so so the benefit of your platform was that it was not necessarily the same geographically located targeted banking market, so they were able to go out of that?
Yeah, so the benefit of going onto a platform like ours rather than just going into your favorite bank and applying for a loan is you fill out one application and you're going in front of hundreds of different lenders all at one time. You have your credit pulled one time versus 100 times. You don't have to worry about getting turned down and getting adverse action letters from every bank. It saves you a ton of time, and it also saves these banks because now, and other lenders, because they're able to syndicate a deal online with people, that other lenders they don't even know. And that's all done for them seamlessly. We underwrite the deal for them so they don't have to worry about that, and it's all done very quickly. So it's rather than having to go from bank to bank to bank and get turned down.
And you're also going through the exemption of the SEC at this point. This is very important because if you don't do it right, the SEC is going to come on your back.
Yeah, you have to use the platform.
Yeah, I'm a securities attorney and represented Prosper when they got shut down. So yeah, I'm very familiar right now with we're being very, very careful.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said there are 550 platforms you can choose from, and some are debt, some are equity, or they're all equity?
Some are debt, some are equity, some are rewards, some are donations. They're kind of all over the map. Some are in the UK, some are in Slovakia, some are in Russia, and some are here. What I will say is what my team did is they said, okay, of the 530 that were listed, who's been funded and who's actually doing deals in the United States, and there are only 18. So there are far fewer who are active today. There are a lot who are planning on being active.
And some went out of business. There was a Crowdfunding company that I really enjoyed their presentation.
Jessica Jackley, the founder of ProFounder, is the biggest advocate for the Jobs Act. She was there from the very beginning, was there in the Rose Garden when President Obama
And what happened? Why did they close? I love that company.
They were offering securities, and they flew in the face of California
They were
state
early.
law.
Yeah.
Yes, they were early. They were ahead of the time.
It's very different.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting on the amount of platforms too, because I'm lucky enough that I get to see all these platforms come and say, hey, we need to accept payments. What do we do? And for the donation-based ones, you're seeing this frenzy of people saying, well, Amazon's shutting me down or PayPal's shutting me down, and there's a lot of change in the industry there. But what I'm seeing is that you've got like your major 5, I'd say, that are up in the top that have been there, and then you're starting to see ones that are very specific.
Which are the major 5? Tell the audience.
Well, I mean, I think so you've got Kickstarter, you've got Indiegogo. There's a debate around Rocket Hub. I'm not sure exactly where they kind of fall into place. And these are non-equity ones. So this is not to GoFundMe, which is donation-based. They've been growing very quickly. I'd say that's the top 4.
I
The other
listed
ones
the
it gets a
top
little
10
smaller.
on my blog.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't
and then
read
look
them.
at Joyce's blog.
Hollywood2020.net, and the top 10 are there, along with some like Go Green, which is for green-funded projects, and a couple of other ones that are verticals for consumer goods or food or whatever at this point. So
There are also like Funders Unite, which is for social enterprises. That's a strict donation-based. Peer
Right.
Backers is the same
those
way.
guys are great, yeah.
So questions from the audience at this point. I think we really got a lot of good information. Let's start with you.
So Tyler, just
Yeah.
following up on what you were talking about. So Pebble Watch raised $10 million.
Yeah.
They haven't delivered.
Yeah.
They still haven't delivered.
Definitely.
Who's at risk?
Definitely.
Amazon's Kickstarter, Pebble, they don't deliver. What happened?
It's a big question, right? So that's why you're starting to see Kickstarter reject projects, right? And Amazon payments, for example, PayPal payments saying, we don't want to underwrite the risk for this. Because where does it fall? On a big Kickstarter platform, Kickstarter's got a lot of cash and they have deeper pockets, so Amazon's okay with that one. But for a smaller guy, it's a little bit different. Really, I think it comes down to the payment partner. A lot of times, like in the payments platforms that we are the crowdfunding platforms that we run the payments for, we actually underwrite the risk for each one of those projects. We're able to do that because we underwrite risk differently. So we can get, they can provision an account very quickly. And then we do kind of 2 checks, like who is the organizer and is that person real? And then there's how do we mitigate the business risk? So using social and figuring out a lot of information about this person from recommendations to Facebook, everything, we can get a good understanding of like who this person is and if they're good at what they do. And then we also open it up to the community too. So people will shut down accounts and say, hey, this guy he's not going to be able to deliver, or this is fraud.
Just a quick thing. It's very clear actually now. I mean, the bag is in Amazon's hands on that particular Pebble deal. When you sign the contract on Kickstarter, and you've signed it before, but I spent a lot of time reviewing that contract, there is no responsibility on the issuer, on the creative. The responsibility actually falls on the payment processor. And so I mean, it's a huge risk.
It's the same as any other credit card transaction.
Right.
Right. Well, the thing, too, is I don't think a lot of people that are failing to deliver are doing it deliberately. I mean, if some site, every person that they admit onto the site delivers their project, I'm going to invest all of my money in that site. If you have some sort of crystal ball to figure out every company that's going to be successful.
Well, and I've raised money and still haven't delivered to my investors. So, I mean, and it's not for lack of trying.
That's why I think when you're seeing a failure to deliver, generally speaking, you can probably guess that the person intended to deliver, but startups are hard and they tend to fail. 4 to 5 restaurants fail. Imagine if every restaurant was funded on Fundable, right? 4 or 5 of them would never deliver, right? Would that have been a problem with Fundable? No, that problem existed long before Fundable or crowdfunding. Startups fail in educating the populace to say, look, this isn't Best Buy. You're not buying and you're going to get the watch to be sure. You're making an at-risk investment. I think that's going to be one of our hardest things.
But that's also why crowdfunding is so important, because now you've got the crowd intelligence. So if a few people start to smell a rat, they can say, wait a minute, this person they have a finance degree and yet they're starting a movie? They have no background in this space. That's where the crowd becomes really super important.
Right, and it took about 7 years for eBay for that to develop that community sort
But
of
I think you're
policing.
talking about two
And the
things.
feedback loop is very important
takes
with
takes
eBay.
some time. So how long do you think, Tyler, is going to take
To take for what?
to actually do what Candace was saying, that actually consumers would police in essence?
It happens today on these
the
platforms.
network.
That's the
Okay.
beauty of the platform. I didn't really finish with the Lockatron example, but the one thing there was that no one could really tell if this was real or not, right? People saw the press and they just said, oh, I'll donate. And there's not a lot of risk there because they're not charging my card immediately. But on platforms like GoFundMe is a perfect example because they do a lot here. They open up Facebook comments, right? So you can see, is this fake? Is this real? What's happening? And you're able to see pretty quickly if this is not. But
Did you see what
but-
Yelp.com did this week in terms of having feedback from people and showing that these
So they
particular
jumped in.
providers were really buying endorsements?
No matter how good the systems get, it sort of doesn't matter. Because no matter how good the system gets, you're not going to be able to bypass the fact that startups fail at scale. If you're Sequoia, which is the best VC by far, right? They're seeing the most incredible deals. 7 out of 10 of their investments are going to fail. Of the best, most qualified, well-funded, top-of-the-food chain entrepreneurs, right? That's really what you're dealing against. No screening system is going to prevent against that. You want to do everything you can to try to help that and try to take out the fraudsters, but what you're going to see at scale on failure has to do with just the nature of startups.
But I would say that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If they don't deliver, they don't deliver, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm still on the hook, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like whatever. The reason that also we look at startups and we look at why couldn't Pebble get funding? In Silicon Valley, VCs don't really want to invest in hardware. They just don't. It's not something that they feel comfortable
Or
in.
consumer goods in this case.
And so that's where I think equity crowdfunding makes the most sense. Retail, local,
Even
goods,
entertainment,
goods that are
right? We have to deal with
Exactly.
if you can actually position a company in a way that it's a company in a slate of projects, you have a chance at equity. I was hoping for someone to say that, but
Yeah.
because we're sitting in a
answer your
room
question?
full of producers. Yeah, let's go back there. My TV production Emmy Award winning producer. Go ahead.
Okay.
I produce a travel series, and it airs. We provide it through to PBS nationally. It's syndicated.
It airs on PBS nationally?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also.
What's it called?
We Can Explore.
We Can Explore.
We can explore.
We Can Explore. Thank you.
Yeah, and it also airs in 24 countries. Blah 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 blah. We have no problem. Well, we don't have the problem that everyone wants us to come, not the other way around. But what you said, I can't imagine, because I work with a lot of other producers on commercial TV and stuff like that, that they've got great viewership and stuff like that. It's like pulling teeth to get a visitors bureau to put up.
I don't know. I've done it before, and I worked with the new home show on PBS, which was in 200 markets, kind of the opposite of this old house, and we raised a lot of money through tourist bureaus.
Like I said, it works for me, and it would work in that situation.
Yes.
Can you give us maybe some insight?
In working with the Hawaii Visitors Bureau, I enabled maybe 50 film projects to come. Independent documentaries. I actually started the Hawaii Documentary Festival. So all of that has come from film bureaus or individual companies or Hawaii Hotel Association or whatever. The other thing we haven't talked about is barter. A great deal of the world runs on barter. Corporate barter is a big amount of money. And if you could get airline tickets, if you can get free cameras, if you can get film processing, all of that, Kodak for years would give you film that was just
I believe there will be a platform dealing with this because it's big enough of a market that production companies tap into today that you would actually be able to automate this process. That's where I was going earlier,
and
right?
a marketplace of some sort. And this has been tried before. There have been millions of dollars on marketplaces like this in the early stages of the internet, but the broadband wasn't available and the distribution wasn't available. So yes, every single project, I bet, in this room can be funded with crowdfunding and alternate sources of funding, including grants, possibly. And it will take anywhere from 6 to 3 months to do that. But many of this can run on the crowdfunding platform. As I said, one of the great secrets of raising any money, and if anybody worked with a charity, raised money for a charity, or done a marathon run or something, one of the secrets in raising money for Red Cross, for example, is you start with a certain amount of money. If you're going to raise $10 million, you start with a certain amount of money already raised. You have that concert already organized. She is one of the things that, I would love to work with you on is, even if, pro bono here, is where are you going to show this film? And let's get this, either in webinars or at Lemon Drop, get you some marketing partners so you have a guaranteed audience. This is exciting then when I do have the guaranteed audience, And so you get into that, and then you look at the various sources of funding. It is a matter of thinking outside of the box and not being afraid. I have a client that did a great book, and I can't think of it right now, but it was about getting married, and he interviewed 50 couples across the country who've been married for 50 years. And he got an RV donated, he got a hotel donated, he got all kinds of material donated to make his documentary.
So it's thinking outside the box. We have one more question. Right, right there. You guys still have the question? Go for it. Go ahead.
My question is actually on the other side of the equation.
Okay.
I'm more toward Candace. I, as a lender, signed up to your company. So how is that person, you mentioned Toyota, another major have already signed, how are they protected in that their money is going and going to get done so the product doesn't become vaporware?
Well, again, my site's a little bit different because since we're debt, we're highly liquid. You know within 30 days if there's going to be repayment or not, unlike an equity, which it could take quite some time. So, for instance, Toyota, the reason that they signed on to our platform to lend was they wanted to lend to their suppliers because their suppliers weren't able to meet their demands, and the suppliers were saying we can't get funding, we can't get financing to meet the demands for what you're asking for. So Toyota said, fine, we will fund you, and we'll just charge a competitive interest rate with what the banks would charge you, and then you can meet our demands. The way that it works from an investor perspective on our platform is the investor signs up. They tell us what kind of investor they are. If they're a corporation, if they're an individual, we say hold tight. We'll help you in a few short months. But if they're a corporation, they then tell us their specific preferences. So based on NAIC code, types of industries, risk profiles, geographies, if they have a preference there, and then we only send them the borrowers that meet their very specific criteria. We've already pre-underwritten these borrowers just like a bank would. So we say, based on what's otherwise available to this person on the market, this is what they should be eligible for from an interest rate perspective and an amount and a term. They then make the loan, and the note is signed directly between them and the borrower. And then we have everything set up via ACH processing. We're partnering right now with Vantiv. And so the payments go back and forth automatically via ACH into each other's bank accounts. It's all managed through escrow. So we have an escrow account where the money is held until all the money is raised. And then you see the money back in your account.
You would have a legal note, okay? And if you were going to do that equally in sponsorship or another way, you would still have some legal document that has to be involved if you're going to have a significant amount of money. If you're going to just throw $1,000, that's a different story.
So they always have a breach of contract claim at all points in time.
And possibly mail fraud, and possibly group class action suit.
So hopefully on that positive note, let's take one more question. Let's finish it on an up and up note.
Thank you, sorry.
There's changing government come November. Would that affect what's happening in the Jobs Act?
Yes.
So no matter who's elected, I don't think this changes things because the Jobs Act was passed with bipartisan support. It had a Republican sponsor in the House, a Democratic sponsor in the Senate. It had more votes than most pieces of legislation have. And it's a Jobs Act. No one wants to be the one to repeal the Jobs Act. I mean, think about that. Where I think we have...
The Jobs Act actually stands for Jumpstart Our Business Startups.
But I mean, from a political perspective, no one wants to be the one to overturn the Jobs Act. But where we're more concerned is the SEC. And Mary Shapiro with the SEC will be stepping down at the end of the year. Who replaces her concerns me more than who is elected as president.
Because they can not really repeal the Jobs Act, but they
can take as much time as they like in drafting the regulations.
They can stall, right?
They can really put pressure on the act. So, yes.
Is that an appointed position?
Yes.
So now you know how to vote. No, I'm just kidding. Now we're just giving so much advice today.
This has been up for some time, and we've got the filmmaker on the panel.
Can we watch it?
Great to actually close out.
Yes, let's do it. Go for
Yeah,
it.
please. Let's see it so she can say it was screened at Digital Hollywood.
Hey, Laura. Hey, Mara.
See that car?
So, do you want to go on a road trip? Like a completely life-changing cinematic and political road trip in which 3 diverse, powerful, and hilarious women go on the road to campaign for John Kerry in 2004? 2004, yes. It was such a different time. The country was so torn along partisan lines and culture wars. We'll co-write it, I'll direct it, and you'll produce it. Dunzo. Does any one of these girls by any chance have a secret? Yes, she does. Farah Mehta, a beautiful but curiously virginal woman in her 20s, finally wants to have sex for the first time. Ooh, sex! We'll call it Farah Goes Bang! Oh, I love that. So what do we need? So much.
Pizza Hut?
This feels a little light. Well, we've got
Liz
Singh, our
goes away.
producer, in there. Hey, Liz.
Hi, guys. I'm so excited to make this movie. I'm in a box.
Oh, we forgot our other producer, Danielle Ferruzzi, and our DP, Paul Gleason. Can you just... Sure.
Oh, it's so adorable.
Awesome. How much bigger this is than last month? Here, we forgot to bring something really important. Dude, we can only cram in so much. What would this epic road trip be without 10 years of friendship? Oh, this was the day we made the collage commemorating Katie Holmes' first night of marriage to Tom Cruise.
Maybe Katie Holmes would write a story about losing her virginity for our blog, Cherry Bomb.
Did you hear that sound? That was the sound of my heart exploding.
This is what our exploding hearts are gonna look like on screen.
Terrific suggestion. I want to thank our wonderful project, our producer for being here with us on the panel, and all of our panelists for sharing some, life-changing things for several industries, for private equity funding, for debt financing, for media and digital media, and then just the way that startups in the internet and other hockey stick industries can get funding. So we covered quite a bit in 45 minutes. Thank you for staying with us through lunch.